Welcome to Open for Business, the Gallatin Valley's only local business and consumer talk show featuring Tom Egelhoff, the Man Entrepreneur magazine radio called the leading authority in the United States for doing business in small town. Here he is, speaker, author, small business consultant, and Mrs. Egelhoff's favorite son, Tom Egelhoff.
All right, welcome everyone. Open for Business. We air every Saturday live from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Mountain Time on AM 1450 KMMS in Bozeman, 1340 KPRK in Livingston, Montana. If you'd like to be a part of the big broadcast, go to kmmsam.com and click Listen Live. The call-in number during the show, 406-522-TALK, 406-522-8255. I'm here, you're here. Let's get the show on the road. It is 25 minutes before the top of the hour, 56 degrees outside. It's Saturday, May 18th, 2013. Welcome you to the podcast portion of Open for Business. Each week I share some tips and tricks I've learned over the years about advertising, marketing, promotion, building strong, successful businesses. And I do these Open for Business podcasts live every Saturday between 11:30 and noon Mountain Time right here on AM 1450 KMMS in Bozeman. 1340 KPRK in Livingston, and streaming worldwide on the web at kmmsam.com. You can also pick us up using the smartphone app, Radio Pup. That's Radio PUP. So just downloaded that the other day myself with my new smartphone. So works out pretty well. If you missed any of my previous podcasts, you'll find them all on my website at smalltownmarketing.com. That's smalltownmarketing.com. Just go about halfway down the home page on the left, and you'll find a link to the podcast page so you can catch up on any of my podcasts you might have missed. Today's topic is pricing methods and how to use them. So one of the first sales jobs I held early in my career was selling furniture in a small mom and pop retail store. I ended up selling there for about 8 years. So at the time I was hired, I was sharing my very first bachelor pad with a friend of mine, and we had elegantly furnished our domain with our respective family hand-me-downs. We had the cinder blocks with the 1x12s for bookcases, and in fact, we bought our first sofa at a second-hand store for $5, including delivery. So those were the days, huh? As you may have guessed, this was my introduction to furniture pricing. So when I began my first day as a furniture salesman, I was given a tour of the store, I guess, and 3 stories worth. It was an old mom and pop type store that years ago furniture stores used to have funeral homes attached. So the furniture store was a way to keep everybody employed between funerals, and they sold coffins and things. But of course, we didn't sell the coffins any longer. We just sold the furniture. So as I was going around the store looking at the sofas and chairs that cost a month's pay, I decided that I would fail miserably at this job. Not because of my ability, but because no one could possibly afford this stuff. How on earth did they stay in business? Well, as I gained more experience in the workplace, as you can imagine, I learned that people could afford that stuff. They could afford a lot of it. But the most important lesson I learned was this, that price is a matter of perception by the customer. So it's a matter of what makes something valuable. And information is one of the things that makes things valuable. We can't make a decision or determine value without some information about the product or service. So we need a frame of reference to put the product and the price in the proper perspective. And here's an example that I use when I do some of my seminars. I show my class my cross pen and ask them to estimate the retail value of it. Most guess correctly, having seen them at Staples or some other office supply outlet. They're around $35 or so. And next I tell them the pen is used, still in good shape, but not new. And they often drop the price to $5 or less. Next, I tell them it doesn't work at all. Now, how much is it worth? Most say it's not worth anything. So next, I tell them it doesn't work because the ink in the cartridge is filled with an ounce of solid gold. Now, it's suddenly a bargain at the original price. In fact, it's a bargain at 10 times the original price. So the point of this exercise is that every time I gave the class new information about the pen, their perception of the value changed. It went from the new price to the used price to the zero price to great value. So I took them from a starting price of $35 to near zero to over $1,000 just by only adjusting the information that I gave them about the item. So every customer walks up to you and asks how much without getting the information that justifies the price, you're doing that customer a disservice if you give them the price outright. So you may be saying, well, doesn't demand dictate price? Well, the most common marketing theory is that demand for your product or service determines the cost of it. And if there is a huge demand for your product, the public will pay more to get it. If they don't, you should lower the price to increase sales. In my opinion, this is a major mistake that people make who are new to business, because what they do is easy for them. They find it hard to ask for a reasonable price for their service. But doesn't lowering the price give the perception that quality might be lacking? How can one barber in one part of the country charge $20 for a haircut and another charge $200? Are haircuts in demand at the $200 place? Are people lined up around the block for haircuts? Are they camping out in front of the business to get the first haircut? Not usually. There is, however, a price perception of the value of the $200 haircut in the mind of the consumer. Jose Eber on Rodeo Drive gets anywhere from $200 to $400 for a haircut. The business owner set the price. He set the price of the haircuts that he provides. So how are prices determined? Well, in this podcast, I want to explore 4 methods of establishing prices for products and services. We're going to cover cost plus pricing, demand pricing, competitive pricing, and markup pricing. So let's start with cost plus pricing. This is one of the most effective ways of pricing items that you make yourself. For example, if you make furniture or some type of custom craft product, it ensures that you can cover your costs, make a profit, and continue to produce your products in the future. Here's how it works. It's a pretty simple formula on paper, but not in the real world. Cost plus simply means you add up all your costs in making your product. This would include materials, your time, overhead, heat, rent, etc., delivery, plus the amount of profit you wish to receive for your efforts. One of the biggest problems with cost plus pricing is you almost always forget a cost somewhere along the way. Each cost that's not included cuts your profit. So once you've established your price, it's hard to go back and up your price that quickly. So this can be an effective method of pricing because the price of handmade items are hard for the customer to compare to other products. That frame of reference I mentioned earlier is missing. So sell the craftsmanship, the quality, the one of a kind, and it's easier to justify your price. Now let's talk about demand pricing method. This is one of the toughest methods for most new businesses to master, and you'll most likely learn it by costly trial and error. But here's how demand pricing works. Using the example I just covered, you create a one-of-a-kind coffee mug. You begin by selling some to local retail stores that only buy in 3s or 4s. Word gets out, and suddenly Target and Walmart want to carry your mugs. They want several hundred or perhaps several thousand. So are you going to sell to Target or Walmart for the same price as the retail store? No. Volume of that kind usually demands a lower price per item cost to the buyer. So your overall profit is more, but your per piece profit is slightly smaller. So the mass merchant will probably sell it for less than the local retailer to move the larger volume. So in demand pricing, you may have several price lists. You might have a price list for retailers, one for wholesalers, one for discount stores, one for department stores, one for internet sales, mail order, whatever. So volume and pricing are hard to structure because of all the variable costs that are involved in that. You've got shipping and billing and inventory and material costs all come into play, and each can have a positive or negative effect on profits if not handled correctly. So it's not a method for the inexperienced business person. Now let's talk about competitive pricing. Should I be priced the same as the other guy? Competitive pricing means there is a commonly perceived price for a product regardless of the brand of that product. So Coke and Pepsi are usually about the same price. So later on in my sales career, I spent some time working at Circus City, which is the electronic retail giant. They're since out of business. But at the time I was working for them, they were doing $1 billion more than their nearest competitor with fewer stores. So it's pretty impressive. And one of the duties that each of us salespeople had was to drop by the competition and make a list of the products they carried and the prices. If a competitive manager caught you, they would politely ask you to leave. So the other salespeople were pretty sympathetic to us because next week we'd see them in our store doing the same thing. So the common defense for this type of pricing was to carry similar but not exactly the same products. For example, If we had an XYZ 330 DVD player, the competition might carry the XYZ 333 for a slightly lower or higher price. So the two units looked exactly alike on the outside, but inside some feature was either added or missing to raise or lower the price. So it gave the consumer the impression that they were looking at the same item with different pricing, when actually that was not the case. So trying to go head-to-head with a leader in a product category is usually not a wise decision. So if they carry Coke, you carry Pepsi. If they carry Hoover, you have a Eureka. But be different by being the same, just not exactly the same. So let's talk about markup pricing. This is probably the most common method of computing the price of an item. It is similar to the cost plus pricing, but it's most commonly used when you purchase a product to resell to the consumer. So in this scenario, you have a fixed price, the cost of the product and the shipping to get that product to your store. And if the cost of your product is $100 and your selling price is $150, then your markup is 50%. $100 cost divided into $50, 50%, or $100 times 1.5 equals $150 selling cost. So this one's pretty easy, just some simple math on each product you purchase for resale. And depending on the type of product and competitors, you may adjust your markup up or down for various products. So by now, you probably selected one of the above as the method will fit your business best. But before adopting one of these methods, try several scenarios for each one and see what effect it might have on your bottom line. Assume whatever can go wrong will go wrong. Don't accept a method at face value. Make sure it works in all kinds of situations. And plan for the future, as in if your product takes off and all of a sudden you're courted by Walmart or Target or Costco or some of those places, you got to be prepared to have various types of pricing methods available. It's nice to make a profit, so do your homework. So let's talk about how pricing affects your business. When most businesses begin the task of pricing products or services, they generally use some kind of standard markup. Now, this is fine most of the time as long as the markup price is okayed by the market. It's your market that determines what something costs, not your cost. So there is a narrow window that determines the premium price you can charge for a product or service and the floor price. So there's a difference between the floor price of the $20 haircut and the premium price of the $200 haircut. So the premium price is the highest the market will allow. The floor price is the least amount you can sell something for and still make money. Now, keep in mind that it's much easier for the higher end consumer to come down in price than it is for the floor consumer to go up in price. It's harder for someone to spend more for a product. It's easier for them to come down in a product. So I would suggest that you keep your pricing based on the market price in somewhere in the upper 2/3 of the or upper 1/3, I should say, of the market. The price you use has an influence on many facets, of course, of your business, and here's a couple that you can look at. One is profit. As mentioned earlier, the eventual selling price determines how much you're going to make on each sale. So in some cases, you may be able to make a product more efficiently, so your profit to stay in that market price will be better for you. You want to get a good return on your investment. So when you open your business, you may have taken a loan or invested your own money, and the product price determines how quickly you can recoup that investment. Promotion, the course of any small business, seldom runs smoothly. There's going to be times that you'll want to do some type of business promotion. Your pricing will dictate how successful you will be with each promotion. However, if you have a 30% markup and you have a 20% off sale, you'll have to sell twice as much just to make the same money if you hadn't had a sale. So unless you got a deal on what you bought, be careful with sales, because unless you sell enough, you're not even going to break even having a sale, and bringing people in that are not going to be lifetime customers is not going to be good for your business. What about your image? Lexus or Yugo? Do these two products have a price image? How much you charge will affect the customer perception of the value of your service or product. Low price usually means economy, savings, fewer features. High price, prestige, status, quality. So when should you consider changing your price? So as a rule, you should constantly monitor and review your pricing. As the market changes, you should change. If you raise your price, you need to be prepared to back it up with benefits that justify the higher price. If you lower prices, show the customer that you're not going to have to make a sacrifice of quality. There are some circumstances where you might want to consider changes in pricing. For example, new products. New products are often used as a way to raise prices. A new improved product or service can command a higher price. There are industry changes. There will be times when new regulations or changes within your industry may affect your pricing, such as healthcare or some of the other things that are on the horizon. There may be upgrades required to older products that will affect price. Going into a new market. As new markets emerge, you may want to take advantage of new profit centers. The price you charge for new products or services will determine your success or failure in those markets. And the competition. If the competition raises or lowers their price, should you do the same? Well, I would ask, how strong is your competitor? What is the customer perception of the competitor and their pricing? If they're perceived as a discount house, you may not want to change prices. Make sure you know your market, your customers, and your products. And of course, you got inflation and depression. Economy's been pretty weak in the last few years, so you may not think this is something to consider, but unusual things seem to affect the stock market and the buying habits of customers. Always think positive, but be prepared for the worst the economy has to offer. And a change of strategy. When you introduce a new product or service, there's a period of time when sales are high because of curiosity and newness of the product, but as the newness wears off, so do sales. So in order to increase the sales, you can either cut prices, which is not always the best idea, or you can increase awareness through increased advertising or promotion. So depending on the product, if sales go down, it may be the fault of the product and not the price. For example, where would you go to buy a VCR? They've pretty well been replaced by the DVD player, and that's the podcast. Each week, I share some tips I've learned over the years about advertising, marketing, promotion, building strong, successful businesses. I do these Open for Business podcasts live every Saturday between 11:30 and noon Mountain Time right here on AM 1450 KMMS in Bozeman, 1340 KPRK in Livingston, and streaming worldwide on the web at KMMSAM.com. If you missed any of the previous podcasts, you'll find them all on my website at smalltownmarketing.com. That's smalltownmarketing.com. Just go about halfway down the homepage on the left, and you'll find a link to the podcast so you can catch up on any of my podcasts that you might have missed.